December 24th, 2002, Modesto, California. Laci Peterson was 8 months pregnant. She wrapped gifts, smiled at neighbors, then vanished without a sound. Hours later, her husband Scott told police he went fishing alone on Christmas Eve. Days turned into weeks. The town searched, the nation cried. Scott smiled at the camera, held candlelight vigils, all while hiding something dark. Then, 4 months later, the San Francisco Bay gave her back. A tiny body surfaced first. Then Laci, weighted down, decayed, forgotten by the man who vowed to protect her. How did no one see it coming? This is a true story. Subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story, because what happened next shook the world. The sun rose gently over quiet neighborhoods. Children watched cartoons. Parents sipped coffee. Laci Peterson, 27, pregnant with a baby boy named Connor, took the dog for a walk. It was supposed to be a perfect Christmas Eve, but by nightfall, everything changed. She was gone. What happened to Laci Peterson? Why did Scott say he went fishing alone that day? And why did his smile feel fake? The sun rose gently over the small city of Modesto. Streets were quiet. Christmas lights twinkled from rooftops. Families sipped hot cocoa, wrapped gifts, and prepared for a joyful evening. For Laci Peterson, it was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. She was 8 months pregnant with a baby boy she and her husband had already named, Connor. Laci was radiant. Just 27 years old, she had a glowing smile and a warm, nurturing presence. She had spent the days before Christmas planning, organizing, and decorating their cozy home on Covenant Avenue. She had baked cookies, arranged gifts under the tree, and even washed baby clothes for Connor's arrival in just a few short weeks. Her husband, Scott Peterson, was a handsome, smooth-talking 30-year-old fertilizer salesman. He was well-liked, polite, and friendly. To neighbors, they looked like the perfect couple, young, successful, and madly in love. But that Christmas Eve morning, everything changed. Scott said he last saw Laci around 9:30 a.m. She was wearing black pants and a white shirt. She told him she planned to walk their dog, Mackenzie, and then go grocery shopping to prepare for their Christmas Eve dinner. Scott told police that he decided to go fishing alone, driving over 90 miles away to the Berkeley Marina. By early afternoon, Laci was gone. Laci's stepfather, Ron Gransky, called the police. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, was frantic. No one could reach her daughter. Laci hadn't shown up at her mother's home for their planned Christmas Eve gathering. She wasn't answering her phone. No one had seen her at the store. Her car was still in the driveway. Her purse, keys, and cell phone were inside the house. Scott arrived home and said he found their dog Mackenzie wandering around the neighborhood, alone, still wearing his leash. He didn't seem panicked. He washed his clothes. He ate pizza. And then finally he said he realized something was wrong. To Laci's family, something already felt wrong. She would never disappear without calling. Never miss Christmas Eve dinner, never leave her dog loose or her phone behind. She was responsible, loving, and careful, especially while carrying a baby. Police began searching the area immediately. Neighbors joined in. Posters were printed. Flashlights cut through the night. Helicopters circled overhead. But there was no trace of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Within 48 hours, Laci's disappearance was national news. A beautiful, pregnant woman gone without a trace on Christmas Eve? It was every family's nightmare. The story gripped the country. Reporters camped outside the Peterson home. News anchors repeated her description over and over. People wanted to believe she had just gotten lost. Maybe she slipped and fell. Maybe she was in the hospital or had a medical emergency. But nothing made sense. The neighborhood was quiet that morning. No screams, no broken windows, no blood. No witnesses, just silence. And then there was Scott. From the beginning, his behavior didn't sit right with many people, especially Laci's family. He seemed calm, too calm, while others cried, panicked, and searched. Scott gave polished interviews and smiled at candlelight vigils. He told one reporter he had lost his wife, but he also slipped up and referred to her in the past tense, when she was still considered missing. At a press conference, Sharon Rocha stood trembling beside a poster of her daughter. Her voice cracked as she begged for help. Next to her, Scott shifted uncomfortably. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. On New Year's Eve, the family organized a massive vigil. Hundreds gathered to pray. They lit candles, sang songs, held hands. As Laci's mother wept in front of the crowd, Scott was seen in the back, laughing on the phone. He was calling his mistress. Just days into the investigation, Modesto police began quietly looking into Scott's background. Something didn't add up. His fishing story felt strange. Why go alone? Why drive so far on Christmas Eve? Why wasn't he more frantic? Then, they got a tip. A woman named Amber Fry had been dating Scott Peterson for weeks. He told her he wasn't married, told her his wife had died. Amber had no idea Laci was missing. She had seen the news and thought it was someone else, until she saw Scott on TV. Terrified and disgusted, Amber called the police. They asked her to keep talking to him and record everything. She agreed. The man who stood in front of cameras claiming to love and miss his wife was whispering sweet nothings to another woman, telling her he wanted to start a new life, telling her that Christmas would be hard because it was the first one since his wife's death. But Laci wasn't dead, not yet, at least, not officially. As the days passed, Laci's family began to see the truth. Scott had lied, he was hiding things, and now police were watching his every move. Investigators searched his warehouse, his truck, his boat. They found strange things, concrete dust, receipts, and evidence he had researched the tides at the Berkeley Marina. Still, they didn't have a body or a confession, just suspicion, just a growing mountain of lies. But outside that quiet house in Modesto, a storm was brewing. The nation was watching, the clock was ticking, and somewhere out there, Laci and Connor were waiting to be found. Long before Scott Peterson became a household name, he was just a quiet college student with a charming smile and a love for golf. And long before Laci Rocha became a national symbol of heartbreak, she was just a bright, bubbly girl from Modesto with big dreams and a kind heart. In the beginning, their love story seemed like a fairy tale. It was 1994. Laci was studying ornamental horticulture at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. She had a deep love for flowers, nature, and beauty. Friends said she lit up every room she walked into, confident, kind, always laughing. Scott was studying agricultural business at the same university. He worked part-time at a restaurant called Pacific Cafe. One night, Laci came in to eat with a friend. Scott served her. By the end of the night, she gave her number to the waiter. He called the next day. From that moment on, they were inseparable. Scott was thoughtful, polite, clean-cut. Laci adored him. She told her mother, "I met the man I'm going to marry." It didn't take long. In 1997, they tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony attended by friends and family. Smiles all around. Two young people starting a life together. They looked perfect, but looks can lie. After college, they moved to Modesto to be closer to Laci's family. They bought a small, cozy home on Covenant Avenue. Laci turned it into a dream house. Colorful flowers outside, neatly decorated rooms inside. Scott started selling fertilizer for a company called Trade Corp. Laci worked as a part-time substitute teacher. She loved gardening. She loved decorating. She loved her family. She wanted a baby. Years passed, no pregnancy. The pressure grew. Friends noticed Laci talking more about children. She decorated a nursery in advance, picked out names. Still, no baby. Then finally, in 2002, she got pregnant. Everyone was overjoyed. Scott smiled for pictures. Laci glowed in every photo. They picked the name Connor. They planned a future, but behind those smiles, something darker was growing. Laci's family noticed small things. Scott wasn't always affectionate. He didn't attend baby classes. He didn't help much around the house. He worked long hours, as her Zoe said. He didn't seem excited about the baby, but Laci, ever optimistic, brushed it off. "He's just tired," she'd say. "He'll come around." What she didn't know was that by October 2002, just 2 months before her disappearance, Scott had already started seeing another woman. Her name was Amber Frey, and he told her he was single. Amber Frey was a 27-year-old massage therapist and single mother. She met Scott through a mutual friend. He said he was a widower. She believed him. He was charming, smart, said all the right things. They went on romantic dates, danced, slept together. Amber had no idea she was the other woman. No idea Laci was 8 months pregnant. No idea she was being used. Scott called her often, sent gifts, made plans for the future, all while attending Lamaze classes with Laci, all while helping her hang stockings for Connor. To the outside world, he was a doting husband, a future father. But to Amber, he was a grieving widower, weeks before his wife ever went missing. As the case unfolded, people started asking, who was the real Scott Peterson? Was he a stressed-out husband who snapped? A cold-blooded killer with a plan? Or just a selfish man caught in a lie too big to control? His friends said he was charming but distant, polite but private. He liked to be in control. He liked to look perfect. Some said he had a dark side, a need to be admired, a fear of failure. Laci, on the other hand, was described as pure light. She adored holidays, traditions, and her growing belly. She kept journals of her dreams for her son, wrote letters to Connor, planned baby showers. She had no idea her life was falling apart. On December 14th, 2002, just 10 days before she vanished, Laci had her baby shower. Dozens of friends and family came. She wore a patterned dress that showed off her big round belly. She smiled in every photo. Scott didn't stay long. He said he had errands. He looked distracted. He gave her a quick kiss and left. That night, Laci placed baby gifts in the nursery, folded tiny onesies, hung a little mobile over the crib. She was getting ready for life, but someone else may have already been planning her death. In Modesto, people were stunned. How could Scott Peterson, the quiet, polite husband from down the street, be hiding such secrets? How could a man go from expecting father to suspected killer in just days? What changed? Was it fear, shame, desire, or had he never truly loved her at all? In the early days of the search, Laci's friends clung to hope, hung posters, wore ribbons, lit candles. But privately, whispers began to spread. Had this always been a perfect couple, or just a perfect lie? Modesto, California, December 24th, 2002. 5 p.m. night had fallen over Covina Avenue. A cold wind whipped through the Los Angeles Christmas lights still flickering on rooftops. In the Peterson home, the front door stood wide open. Flashlights swept across the empty living room. Officers moved in formation, calling Laci's name. Outside, friends and neighbors formed a human chain. They fanned out through backyards and alleys, scanning for footprints in the wet grass. A dozen patrol cars lined the street, their red and blue lights painting houses in ghostly hues. Where could she be? Why did the dog come home alone? What did Scott Peterson really know? Inside the house, Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, knelt beside the Christmas tree. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she fingered a pair of tiny socks. Her husband, Ron Gransky, stood behind her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. He whispered prayers under his breath. Sharon's sobs echoed through the halls. Every ornament felt like a promise, broken. Every gift under the tree, a reminder of a future stolen. A knock on the door startled them. Sergeant Phil Musica entered, his face grim. "We're doing everything we can," he said softly. "Can you think of anywhere she might have gone? Anyone she was upset with?" Sharon shook her head. She loved Scott. She loved this house. She loved this baby. Across the street, Mrs. Delgado shone her flashlight toward the Petersons' backyard. She described seeing Scott's truck leave around 10 a.m., then return around 2 p.m. "He looked worried," she recalled, "but he waved at me, like everything was okay." Mr. Patel joined in. "I heard a splash around noon. Sounded like something heavy hitting water." Detectives noted each detail. Each sighting became a clue, or a trap. They mapped them on whiteboards. 9:30 a.m., Laci with Mackenzie heading east. 10 a.m., Scott's truck leaves home. 12:05 p.m., possible splash at nearby canal. 2 p.m., Scott returns alone, but none of it made sense. No body, no weapon, no confession. Just the empty ring on Laci's finger. Within hours, word reached local news stations. A helicopter hovered above the neighborhood. Reporters chased every rumor. Live cameras pointed at letterboxes, trash cans, and even storm drains. The Peterson home became a stage. "Pregnant mother vanishes," blared one banner. "Did her husband kill her?" asked a screaming Chiron. Viewers across America tuned in. Some offered prayers. Others demanded answers. Internet chat rooms lit up with speculation. "He's guilty. Look at his face. She ran away. Maybe he abused her. This is his perfect crime." On the streets of Modesto, volunteers formed search parties. They walked through orchards and empty fields. They called Laci's name at creek beds and drainage pipes. They trudged through mud, their boots caked in muck. Every shadow held a secret. Every rustle of leaves a terrifying possibility. Through it all, Scott Peterson remained on camera. He spoke in calm, measured tones. He thanked the police. He thanked volunteers. He said he wanted his wife home more than anyone. But there was a catch. He spoke of Laci in the past tense. "It was hard losing Laci," he said on local TV. "She was my best friend. We had a beautiful life together. I just want her back." In the glow of studio lights, his eyes held a strange sadness, but no tears. His lips pressed into a thin line when the interviewer asked about the unborn baby. "I think about baby Connor every minute," he said. "I hope he's safe, wherever Laci is." Viewers watched. Some believed him, many did not. On December 26th, the breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a fisherman at the Berkeley Marina. He called Modesto detectives. "I saw a man in a small fishing boat," the caller said. "He was wearing a black jacket, baseball cap. He looked like he was tossing something heavy into the water." Detectives dashed to the marina. They combed through receipts from the tackle shop. A purchase matched, December 23rd. 2 50-pound bags of quick-setting concrete. Meanwhile, at the Peterson home, officers dusted for prints. They swabbed surfaces for blood. They examined the garage. Underneath motor oil and fertilizer bags, they found nothing. But in Scott's warehouse, a rented storage unit next to his office, they discovered dried concrete flecks on the floor and the bottom of an aluminum fishing boat. They measured tide charts taped to the brim of a hat. It all pointed to one place, the San Francisco Bay. With each hour that passed, hope for finding Laci alive dimmed. The cold water of the bay offered little mercy. Currents could carry a body miles away. Marine experts warned the longer they waited, the less likely she'd be found in one piece. Laci's friends clung to memories. Her laugh, her gentle touch, the way she hummed while hanging ornaments. They prayed for a miracle. They scoured shoreline parks and boat launches. In San Francisco, volunteers joined marine rescue teams looking for floating debris and clothing. Onlookers whispered, "If he did this, what kind of monster is he? If she's alive, why didn't she fight back?" In court of public opinion, Scott Peterson already stood guilty. Back at headquarters, forensic teams worked around the clock. They processed microscopic traces, hair fibers on the boat's railing, fibers from Laci's favorite sweater, white paint chips matching the color of the Peterson home's trim. They used computers to model how a weighted victim would sink or float. They tracked wind and tide data. They drew impossible conclusions. A body even weighted down could eventually surface and wash ashore somewhere else. Meanwhile, Amber Frey's recorded calls played on a loop. Scott softly, "I wish you were here with me. Your voice calms me." Amber, confused, "Your wife, she's missing." "What do you mean she died?" Scott, nervous laugh. "I meant, I'm sorry, I miss her so much." "But she's gone, Amber." Detectives watched Scott's face in court transcripts. They mapped his lies. Every time he said wife, they counted inconsistencies. Fresno, California, December 30th, 2002. The phone rang in Amber Frey's apartment. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, her eyes swollen from days of crying. She looked down at her daughter, asleep on the couch, then slowly lifted the receiver. "Hello?" The voice on the line was calm, familiar. "Amber, it's Scott." She didn't reply right away. Her breath caught, her heart pounded, and for a long, chilling second, she listened, because now she knew. Scott Peterson's wife wasn't just missing, she was already dead. Amber Frey was a 27-year-old single mother, a massage therapist, a kind, trusting woman looking for love. She met Scott Peterson through a mutual friend. He was charming, funny, confident. He said he was a widower, said he was lonely, said he wanted something real. Their first date was magical: dinner, wine, laughter. Scott swept her off her feet. "I don't want to hide anything," he told her. "My wife, she died. This is my first Christmas without her." Amber believed him. Why wouldn't she? He looked into her eyes and told her he had no one. All the while, his pregnant wife was still alive. On December 29, 2002, Amber's world collapsed. A news report showed a photo of Scott standing beside his very much alive wife, Laci, smiling, holding her belly, beaming for the camera. Amber's blood ran cold. The man she had fallen for wasn't grieving. He was lying. To everyone. She called the police immediately. "I know who he is," she told Detective Bueller. "Scott Peterson. He's the man I've been seeing. He said his wife died, but I just saw her on the news." The line went quiet. Then the detective spoke the words that would change everything. "We need your help." For weeks, Amber wore a wire. She recorded every call, every whisper, every lie. Detectives set up equipment in her home. They monitored the phone. They coached her what to say. And Scott? He kept calling, over and over again. "Scott, I'm in Paris right now. The Eiffel Tower's beautiful." Amber, calm. "Are you alone?" Scott, "Yes. Thinking about you." But Scott wasn't in Paris. He was in Modesto, lying beside an empty bed, hiding from his crumbling reality. On January 6, 2003, Amber hit record again. Scott's voice was low, tired. "Amber, Scott, the police called me. They said your wife is missing." Scott, "Yes. I didn't want you to find out like this." Amber, "You told me she was dead before she disappeared." Scott, "I meant we were over." Emotionally. Detectives leaned in, headphones pressed tight. Every word he spoke was another nail. He wasn't grieving. He was cornered. On January 24, 2003, Amber stepped onto a stage. Flashbulbs exploded. The world leaned forward. She stood at a podium, shaking, holding a typed statement. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "I met Scott Peterson on November 20th, 2002. He told me he was single. He told me his wife had died. I now know that was a lie." The room fell silent. Amber continued. "I am cooperating fully with the Modesto Police Department. I had no idea Scott was married. I had no idea Laci was missing." Reporters cried. Viewers at home gripped their remotes. The internet exploded with fury and heartbreak. This wasn't just betrayal. It was deception at the deepest level. The public rage was instant and loud. People burned Scott's photos. Crowds gathered outside his home, shouting "murderer" at his front door. They painted signs, picketed his driveway, hounded him through grocery stores and parking lots. Someone threw red paint across his car hood. Another mailed him a noose. And every time he stepped outside, he wore sunglasses, a hat, and silence. But nothing could hide the truth now. Amber Frey had turned the tide. She wasn't just a witness. She was the crack in his story. April 13th, 2003, Richmond, California. A couple walked along the bay, just north of the Berkeley Marina. The breeze was cool, the water calm. It was Easter Sunday, peaceful until they saw it. Floating near the rocks was something pale, small, round. At first they thought it was driftwood, a washed-up doll, but as they got closer, they saw tiny fingers. Police arrived within minutes. What they found would haunt them forever. The body was that of a full-term infant, umbilical cord still attached, skin bloated from the water. No signs of trauma, except for a piece of nylon tape wrapped around the neck. It was a baby boy, roughly 33 to 36 weeks old, found in the same bay Scott claimed he went fishing. In less than 24 hours later, April 14th, 2003, less than a mile away, another body surfaced. This one was adult-sized, Decayed, unrecognizable. No head, no hands, no feet. Just a torso, badly decomposed, missing limbs, but clothed in beige maternity pants. When coroners opened the remains, they found one chilling clue, a small piece of jewelry, engraved with Laci. The nightmare was now undeniable. The news broke like a bomb. Bodies found in San Francisco Bay. Could it be Laci and her baby? Scott Peterson's alibi under fire. Helicopters swarmed the marina. Reporters camped outside the Modesto Police Department. TV stations ran wall-to-wall coverage. Nancy Grace called it the most damning moment yet. America leaned in, waiting, hoping, dreading. And behind the scenes, detectives were already preparing for the moment they'd been waiting for. DNA results came back in 2 days. The baby was Laci Peterson's son. The torso, Laci herself. Dr. Brian Peterson, no relation, confirmed it through dental records and tissue samples. Though her head was never found, one thing was clear. She was dead, and she didn't die on her own. April 18, 2003, La Jolla, California. Scott Peterson was driving slowly through a neighborhood near the Torrey Pines golf course. He didn't look like himself. His hair was dyed blonde. He had 4 cell phones, $15,000 in cash, multiple credit cards, and a backpack full of camping supplies. Also in his car, a shovel, a tarp, a handgun, Viagra, his brother's ID. The police closed in. Unmarked cars surrounded him. Guns drawn. He was arrested on the spot for the murders of Laci and her unborn son. And just like that, the man who once stood by a Christmas tree with his pregnant wife was now in handcuffs. When his mugshot was released, America stared. His smirk was slight, his eyes cold, and millions of people felt it in their stomachs. This man killed his wife. Scott was charged with first-degree murder of Laci Peterson, second-degree murder of their unborn son, Connor. The case shook California to its core. Prosecutors said they would seek the death penalty. Scott's parents stood by him, insisting he was innocent. But almost no one else believed I. With Amber's recordings in hand, detectives returned to Scott's every move. They retraced his alibi. He said he went fishing at the Berkeley Marina the day Laci vanished. No witnesses saw him launch the boat. No fish were brought home. No receipts showed gear was used. And yet, 2 days before Christmas, he had bought a boat in cash under a fake name. He also searched online for ocean currents, San Francisco Bay, tide charts, how to make cement anchors. Everything pointed in one direction. But there was still one problem. No body, no crime scene, no physical proof of murder. While the world grieved for Laci, Scott played golf. He flirted with women. He shot for new trucks. His family tried to defend him, but even they began to falter. His sister-in-law, Janie, said softly, "I want to believe him, but he's not the same anymore." Detectives watched him through tinted vans. They followed him to the marina. They noted his phone calls. His lies had unraveled, but he kept going, until one call to Amber changed everything. On January 15th, Scott's voice cracked. "Amber, do you think you'll be arrested?" Scott, "No, they have nothing. There's no proof." Amber, "Did you kill her, Scott?" Scott, long silence. "No, I loved her." But even he didn't sound convinced. The silence in that call was louder than any scream. Amber Frey never asked to be part of a murder case. She was a mother, a healer, a woman trying to protect her heart. But when truth called, she answered. She stood against a killer. She faced the world. She told the truth. And her words would help tip the scales. June 1st, 2004, Redwood City, California. Outside the San Mateo County Courthouse, a crowd had already formed. TV cameras, protest signs, reporters whispering into microphones. Inside, the trial was set to begin. The people of the state of California versus Scott Lee Peterson. A double murder case. A nation watching. The jury, 12 men and women. Ordinary citizens. Teachers, nurses, clerks. They were asked a simple but heavy task. Decide whether this man, a husband, a soon-to-be father, killed the woman he vowed to love forever. The prosecution lead prosecutor, Rick DiStasso, he painted a chilling picture. Scott, he said, was living a double life, pretending to be a happy husband, but in secret he was chasing other women, telling lies, plotting freedom. DiStasso brought receipts, phone records, internet searches, GPS data from Scott's boat trip, photos of the remains, and most of all, he brought Amber Frey. Amber takes the stand. Amber walked slowly to the witness box. The courtroom fell silent. She wore a dark suit. Her voice was calm, steady. She told the jury how Scott wooed her, lied to her, claimed he was a widower. She said, "He told me this would be his first Christmas without his wife." The date? December 9th. Laci was still alive. Gasps filled the courtroom. Amber had worked with police. She recorded 29 phone calls with Scott. In them, he spoke softly. Never once mentioned Laci, even during her disappearance. In one tape, he told Amber, "I want to be a father someday." He already was. His unborn son was missing, presumed dead. The jury listened, eyes wide, mouths shut. The deception was undeniable. Lead attorney, Mark Garagos. He was famous, flashy, smart. He told the jury, there is no murder weapon, no eyewitness, no exact cause of death. He argued that Laci had been kidnapped, that the real killers dumped her body in the same bay Scott went fishing. A coincidence, yes, but not proof. He pointed to contaminated evidence, gaps in the investigation, media bias. He said, Scott was unfaithful, yes, but a cheater doesn't equal a killer. The jury listened. They had to decide. Was it reasonable doubt or a perfect crime? The boat, small, unstable. Prosecutors recreated the launch, showed how Scott could dump a weighted body without tipping over. The anchors, homemade, made with concrete. 4 were found in his storage. A 5th was missing. The Google searches, tides, San Francisco Bay, how to dispose of a body. The lies. Scott told police he was golfing, then admitted he was at the marina. And finally, the bodies, found in the exact location Scott had visited. No other suspect, no other explanation. The Media Circus Court TV aired daily recaps. Nancy Grace raged each night. Oprah covered it. Larry King covered it. Every magazine, every radio. Even jurors were warned, no TV, no papers, no internet. But still, the world buzzed with opinion. Some said Scott looked calm, too calm. Others said he was framed, a scapegoat. The Peterson house was vandalized. Amber received threats. Laci's family sat in court every day, faces blank, eyes full of pain. Laci's mother, Sharon Rasha, took the stand. She described her daughter's last Christmas, the gifts under the tree, the unanswered calls. She broke down in tears, describing the moment she knew. "I felt it. I just knew. Laci was gone." Her voice cracked. Jurors wept. The room turned ice cold. Defense clings to doubt. Garagos fought back. He called experts who argued the baby may have died later. He suggested someone else found Laci first, held her somewhere, then dumped her. He attacked the prosecution's timeline, but nothing explained Scott's behavior. Why the lies? Why the bleach in the house? Why sell Laci's car? Why change your hair, grow a goatee, and carry 4 cell phones? The jury took it all in. They began to talk. The verdict approaches. It had been 5 months. Testimony was over. The jury deliberated. 1 day passed, then 2, then 5. The nation held its breath. Would Scott walk free or face the needle? On November 12, 2004, the verdict was in. Courtroom packed. Families sobbing. Scott stood, silent. The judge asked the jury, "How do you find the defendant?" The foreman stood up. November 12, 2004, Redwood City, California, 1:50 p.m. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. Reporters lined the walls. Scott Peterson stood motionless, jaw clenched, eyes empty. His fate, moments away. The jury had returned. 12 people, ordinary citizens. They looked tired, worn, shaken. Some avoided his gaze. The court clerk stood. In the matter of the people versus Scott Lee Peterson, We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the murder of Laci Peterson and guilty of the murder of Connor Peterson, unborn child. Gasps erupted. Scott blinked. No tears. No words. Just silence. Sharon Rocha collapsed into her son's arms. Justice, at last. Outside, the crowd screamed. Cheers, cries. News anchors scrambled to broadcast the headline, Scott Peterson, guilty of double murder. Laci's family sobbed with relief. The nightmare wasn't over, but a chapter had closed. The defense sat stunned. Garagos placed a hand over his mouth, whispered something to Scott. Cameras rolled. Millions watched. Some celebrated. Others questioned. Was this justice, or was it a conviction built on emotion? But it wasn't over. Now came the sentencing. Would Scott live the rest of his life in a cell, or die by lethal injection? The same jury returned. The same room, a second decision. This time emotions were higher, heavier. Amber Frey returned, said Scott had told her, I'm going to be a great dad someday. Sharon Rocha spoke again, her voice stronger now, more resolute. My daughter was 8 months pregnant. Her body was thrown away like trash. Her baby never took a breath. This man should never take another one. Tears streamed down faces. The jury deliberated. They returned. We recommend death. Before sentencing, Scott had one chance to speak. He stood, adjusted the mic, and said nothing about guilt. No apology, no emotion. Just this. I am innocent. I did not kill my wife. I did not kill my son. The courtroom was ice. The judge nodded and sentenced Scott Peterson to death. In March 2005, Scott arrived at San Quentin State Prison, Cell B1, death row. He was inmate K13700, a small cell, no contact with other prisoners, a steel toilet, a concrete slab bed. Time froze. He would wake each day not knowing if it would be his last. But the story didn't end. In 2012, Scott's new lawyers filed an appeal. They claimed juror misconduct, media bias, flawed jury selection. One juror, they said, had hidden her history of domestic abuse. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned the death sentence. Not the conviction, just the sentence. Scott remained guilty, but now he would live. Years later, Laci's mother stood before cameras, her voice soft, weathered but powerful. This pain doesn't end. It never will. We loved her. We loved Connor. We still do. She held up a photo, Laci smiling, her belly round. We will fight every appeal, every motion, because she deserves justice. Her son deserves justice. A pause. And Scott deserves to stay behind bars until his last breath. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. Laci Peterson was real. Her baby was real. Their lives were stolen. And the man at the center of it all? He still sits in a cell. Today, the Peterson home still stands in Modesto. The White House with green trim. The nursery was never used. The walls still carry echoes. Neighbors walk by quickly. Some avoid looking at it at all. And inside San Quentin, Scott Peterson sits alone. No visitors, no future, just time, and the weight of 2 lives lost. Have you heard this story before? What do you think truly happened that night? If you're drawn to real stories that stay with you, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story, because every week we reveal the darkest truths hidden in plain sight. Watch the next video on your screen, or dive into our playlist of real mysteries and crimes. The next story might be even more shocking,